The moment my ex looked the judge dead in the eye and said, "She's unstable. She lies to our daughter. I want full custody." I felt the air leave my lungs. He said it so calmly, like he was stating a fact. And the judge, she looked like she believed him. I wanted to speak. I wanted to scream, cry, explain, something. But nothing came out. I sat there, heart racing, frozen in that hard courtroom chair while the man who used to tell me he loved me painted me as a danger to the one person I love more than anything, my daughter. Mila sat behind me, holding my mother's hand. She's only 7, but she watched everything. Her wide brown eyes locked onto mine. She could see it. She could feel it. I was drowning and no one was throwing me a rope. Damon, my ex-husband, wore a navy blue suit like he was about to give a TED Talk. Calm, smooth, perfectly rehearsed. The same man who used to scream at me in the car over the wrong takeout order now sat in front of a judge, looking like the picture of responsibility. He was charming. He always had been. That was the problem. The judge asked me if I had anything to say in response. I opened my mouth, but all that came out was a shaky breath. My lawyer glanced at me, silent. The courtroom was dead quiet. My hands trembled. I was about to lose my daughter, and it felt like no one could see what was really happening. Then I heard a voice, small, clear and steady, from behind me. "Your Honor, I brought a video from Daddy's phone. I think you should see it." Everything stopped. The gallery turned. The bailiff looked confused. Damon's face drained of color. And for the first time that morning, Judge Harmon looked surprised. Mila stood up, still holding her pink school tablet in both hands. She wasn't crying. She wasn't scared. She looked braver than I'd ever seen her. She walked up to the front, past the wooden benches, past the man trying to take her away from me, and handed the judge her tablet. I didn't even know she had it with her. I didn't know what she recorded. I didn't even know she knew how to record on Damon's phone, but I knew something had just changed. The judge took the tablet. "What is this?" she asked. Mila's voice was soft but confident. "From last weekend, Daddy said those things when I was supposed to be asleep, but I wasn't. I heard him, and he was really mad. And I thought, if you didn't believe Mommy, maybe you'd believe him." My heart cracked open. My daughter had done what I couldn't. She stood up. She spoke the truth. And suddenly, the courtroom, the place where I felt the smallest, belonged to her. Before the courtroom, before the suit and the silence and the judge's cold eyes, before the video, there was just us, me and Mila. Our apartment wasn't big. It had 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and the kind of creaky floors that groaned every time you crossed them after 10 at night. But Mila didn't mind. She loved it. She called it our nest. She said the pink curtains in her room made it look like the inside of a cotton candy cloud. Most nights, she'd lie on her bed with her stuffed penguin, Pepper, and ask me to read 2 stories instead of 1. I always said yes. I worked from home as a freelance graphic designer, which paid just enough to keep us afloat. My mom, Carolyn, lived a few blocks away and helped watch Mila when I had deadlines. She's the kind of mom who doesn't always say the right thing but always shows up. She'd bring lasagna unannounced, scrub my bathroom when I wasn't looking, and tell me, "You're doing better than you think, Aria." And for a while, I believed her. Mila was 7, smart, soft-hearted, and observant in ways that made adults uncomfortable. She asked questions that made you think twice before lying. She once caught me crying in the kitchen late at night and didn't say anything. She just brought over her blanket and wrapped it around my shoulders. That was the kind of child she was. Our favorite thing was the truth jar. I started it when Damon and I first split. I told her that anytime she had a question or wanted to talk about something confusing or scary, she could write it down and put it in the jar. We'd read 1 note together each night. Some were silly. "Why do people snore?" Others cut deep. "Will Daddy stop loving me if I stay with you?" I told her the truth, always, no matter how much it hurt. The divorce hadn't been clean. Damon wanted control more than he wanted custody. He agreed to joint custody on paper, but in practice, he pushed for more. He questioned every parenting decision I made, criticized what I fed her, complained if I picked her up 2 minutes late. And during his weekends, Mila would come home withdrawn and quiet. Sometimes she wouldn't talk to me at all until Tuesday. I brought it up in court, but Damon knew how to present himself. He was a former college athlete turned sales executive, the kind who made people laugh and remembered everyone's name. He wore confidence like a second skin. In public, he was all smiles. In private, he could snap over spilled juice or a missing charger. I kept track. I documented everything: emails, messages. I had a folder full of texts where he accused me of being unstable, where he called me names no child should hear their father use about their mother, but I never showed those to Mila. I thought I was protecting her. One night, after a particularly tense drop-off, Mila asked if I ever got scared around Daddy. I paused. She looked down at her cereal and said, "I do. But I think I'm not supposed to say that." That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and wondered if I had failed her by not fighting harder, by trying too hard to keep things peaceful. A few weeks later, Damon filed for full custody. He said I was emotionally damaging Mila, that I lied to her about him, that I couldn't provide stability. His lawyer submitted statements claiming I was erratic, unreliable, and mentally unfit to co-parent. When I read those documents, my hands shook. I had to sit on the floor. Carolyn sat beside me, held my wrist, and said, "You have the truth." That's enough. I wanted to believe her. But in court, truth isn't loud. It's buried in evidence and twisted into strategy. Damon's lawyer painted a picture of a woman unraveling. My lawyer told me not to get emotional, not to speak unless asked, not to interrupt. But inside, I was screaming. Mila saw it all. Every tear I tried to hide, every time I whispered, "It's going to be okay," even when I wasn't sure it would be. I didn't know she was watching that closely. I didn't know she was listening. I didn't know she was planning anything at all. She was only 7. But somehow she understood what none of us had said out loud. She knew the truth mattered, and she knew the court needed to see it for itself. The custody hearing was set for a Monday morning. I barely slept the night before. Mila had fallen asleep clutching Pepper, her stuffed penguin, and I sat beside her bed until sunrise, just watching her. My chest felt heavy, like something was pressing down on it. I knew this wasn't just a legal matter. It was a fight for her life as she knew it, for the one thing I had poured every piece of myself into protecting. That morning, my mom came with us. She wore her church scarf, the silky one she only pulled out when she needed courage. I think she knew I didn't have much left in me. Mila wore a blue dress with sunflowers on it and packed her school tablet in her backpack like she always did. She didn't say much in the car. She just stared out the window, humming a tune I didn't recognize. When we walked into the courthouse, Damon was already there. He was wearing the same navy suit he wore to our wedding rehearsal dinner, only this time there was no warmth behind his smile, just calculation. His lawyer stood beside him, clipboard in hand, perfectly groomed, speaking in low tones that sounded rehearsed. Damon turned and looked at me, then at Mila. He smiled and waved like nothing was wrong. Mila didn't wave back. The courtroom felt like a stage, everything polished and cold. My name was on the docket, Damon's too. But the person being judged wasn't just me. It was the version of me he had created on paper. When Judge Harmon entered, the room fell into a quiet tension. She was tall, middle-aged, and didn't waste time. She looked directly at Damon's attorney and said, "You may begin." His lawyer started painting the picture immediately. He described Damon as a stable father. He brought up his consistent job, his clean home, his efforts to shield Mila from Arya's emotional unpredictability. He presented texts between Damon and me, taken completely out of context. In one, I told Damon I was overwhelmed and exhausted. He framed that as evidence of mental instability. In another, I asked him not to raise his voice around Mila. That was twisted into a claim that I was controlling and manipulative. I sat there while the person I had once shared a life with turned everything I'd ever said into ammunition. Damon added his own voice when asked. "She's not well," he said, calm and collected. "She tells our daughter I'm the bad guy. She confuses her. She makes Mila afraid of me. I don't want to take her away out of spite. I'm doing this to protect her." Protect her. That word hit me like a slap. Judge Harmon looked at me. "Ms. Lennox, do you have a response?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. The words were in my chest, pounding to be released, but my voice betrayed me. My heart raced. My tongue felt heavy. All I could do was look over at Mila, who sat behind me, her little legs swinging off the bench. She gave me a look I'd never forget, worried but not afraid. My attorney cleared his throat and offered a weak response about my emotional resilience and how overwhelm is a natural part of single parenting. It wasn't enough. It didn't scratch the surface of what was really happening. No one mentioned the time Damon cursed at me on the phone while Mila was in the room. No one asked why Mila started bedwetting again after his weekends. None of that made it into their version of the story. The judge nodded slightly, scribbling notes. And then Damon stood again and said, "Your Honor, I want full custody. I believe my daughter is being emotionally harmed, and I don't think shared custody is in her best interest anymore." I felt the walls closing in. My breath shortened. My hands clenched the arms of my chair. I looked at Mila again, unsure how I could protect her from what was unfolding right in front of her. That's when Mila let go of my mom's hand, stood up, and walked forward. She didn't ask for permission. She didn't hesitate. "Your Honor," she said, "I brought a video from Daddy's phone. I think you should see it." The room fell still. Damon's face went blank. My mom gasped. I turned in my seat, eyes wide. Mila stood there, holding her school tablet, shoulders square, voice steady. Judge Harmon looked at her. "Excuse me?" Mila held the tablet up a little higher. "It's from last weekend. He didn't know I was awake, but I was. I heard what he said, and I thought it might matter." No one spoke. Not Damon, not his lawyer, not the judge. And for the first time since the hearing began, I felt something shift. Mila had brought more than a video. She had brought the truth into the room, and everyone felt it. Mila stood in the center of the courtroom holding her tablet like it was a shield. Her sunflower dress looked a size too small, the hem grazing her knees, but she didn't fidget. She didn't look back for reassurance. She stood alone, facing the judge. "I brought a video from Daddy's phone," she said again. "I think you should see it." Judge Harmon glanced at the bailiff. "Bring it here," she said. Mila walked the few steps forward and handed the device to the bailiff, who then gave it to the judge. The silence stretched across the room like a tight rope. Damon's jaw was set, his lips pressed into a thin, unreadable line. His lawyer looked from him to the tablet and back again. Neither of them moved. The judge turned the screen toward herself and tapped the play button. For a moment, there was nothing. Just the sound of ambient noise, the kind of distant hum you hear late at night when the world outside has gone still. Then came his voice, loud, harsh. Not the smooth, composed tone he had used just minutes earlier in court. It was unmistakably Damon. He was yelling, "You think you're so smart, huh? Go ahead, try telling anyone, see what happens. You'll end up living in some foster home, and don't think your precious mother can save you. She's pathetic." A chair scraped, a plate clattered. Mila's voice, quiet and frightened, whispered, "I'm sorry." He cut her off. "Don't talk back. You're lucky I even let you come over. If you say a word to her, I swear—" The judge hit pause. She didn't say anything right away. She just sat there, staring at the frozen screen. Damon shifted in his seat. His lawyer leaned in, whispering something fast and panicked, but the judge raised her hand to silence him. "Where did this come from?" she asked, her voice even. Mila answered without hesitation. "He left his phone on the couch. I heard him yelling, and I wanted to record it. I was scared, but I thought if someone heard it, maybe they'd believe me and Mommy." My chest tightened. My daughter had been scared. She had made a plan, and she had followed through with more courage than most adults I know. I wanted to run to her, wrap my arms around her, tell her she should never have had to do any of this. But I stayed in my seat, because this moment belonged to her. Damon spoke up, his voice suddenly forced and defensive. "Your Honor, that recording is taken completely out of context. I was disciplining her. She was misbehaving and—" "Enough," the judge said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like a blade. Damon stopped talking immediately. Judge Harmon turned to Mila. "Thank you for being brave," she said. "You can go back to your seat." Mila nodded and walked back, her steps slower now, the weight of the moment beginning to show in her shoulders. My mother pulled her into her lap and held her tightly. The judge looked at me. "Ms. Lennox, do you have anything else to add?" This time, I found my voice. "No, Your Honor. I think my daughter said it all." The judge nodded once, then leaned back in her chair. She closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them and looked across the courtroom. In light of this evidence, I'm calling for an immediate review of all custody arrangements. Until that is completed, full temporary custody will be granted to Ms. Lennox. Supervised visitation only for Mr. Blake. Bailiff, please escort Mr. Blake from the courtroom until further notice. Damon stood, stunned. You can't be serious. Sir, the bailiff said, stepping forward. He looked like he wanted to argue, but instead, Damon turned and walked out, his lawyer scrambling behind him. The courtroom emptied slowly after that, but we stayed seated. Mila was quiet, head resting against my mom's shoulder. I finally stood and walked over to them, kneeling beside her. You were so brave, I said. She nodded, but didn't speak. I could see it hitting her now, the weight of what she had done. She hadn't just told the truth. She had stood up to someone who had spent years teaching her to stay silent, and in doing so, she had changed everything. The moment Damon walked out of that courtroom under the bailiff's watch, the entire atmosphere shifted. It felt like someone had cracked a window open in a room where we'd all been holding our breath. I could finally inhale, not fully relaxed, but enough to remember that I still had a voice and a heartbeat. The judge left the bench shortly after issuing her order. Her expression never changed, but I saw something different in her eyes when she looked at Mila. A quiet recognition. Not pity, not surprise. Respect. I gathered our things slowly, my fingers trembling slightly as I packed up Mila's bag. She was still curled into my mother's arms, exhausted but alert. Her tablet rested beside her on the bench, the screen still dark after the video. I reached for her hand. Do you want to come with me? I asked. She nodded and slid down from the bench. As we walked out of the courtroom, people watched us. A few glanced away quickly. Others held their stares longer. One woman mouthed the word brave as we passed her. Outside the courtroom doors, I knelt down to Mila's height. My hands rested gently on her arms. Are you okay? She shrugged, then finally said, I didn't want to do it. But I had to. I know, I said. I'm so proud of you. You shouldn't have had to carry that alone. She looked down at the floor. I didn't know if they would believe me. My throat tightened. They did. Because you told the truth, and because you were strong enough to stand up when no one else could. Mila looked up at me, her eyes glistening with quiet tears. Does this mean I don't have to go back to Daddy's house? I pulled her into my arms, holding her as tightly as I could without breaking her. You're safe. That's what matters. The court officers gave us a few more instructions, including a temporary supervision schedule for Damon. He would be evaluated by a court-appointed counselor before any further access to Mila. It wasn't over. There would be more hearings, more documents, more days in courtrooms that felt like battlegrounds. But the hardest part was behind us. That afternoon, we went straight to my mom's house. I didn't want to be alone. I didn't want Mila to go back to our apartment and feel the silence that sometimes echoed too loudly in small spaces. My mom made soup, even though it was warm outside. She always made soup on emotional days. She said it gave her something to stir when everything else felt out of control. Mila sat at the kitchen table drawing a picture with crayons while I filled out more court paperwork on the couch. At one point, she walked over and handed me what she'd made. It was a picture of two hands holding a heart. Underneath, she wrote in big, uneven letters, "Truth is brave." I cried then, not the quiet, hidden kind, but the kind that comes from deep inside your chest when the pain has finally found its exit. Mila didn't say anything. She just sat beside me, leaning her head against my arm. That night, before bed, we went back to our truth jar. It had been collecting dust for a few weeks. I held it in my lap while Mila sat across from me on her bed. Do you want to go first? I asked. She shook her head and pointed to the folded note on top. I opened it and read aloud. What happens when the truth hurts people? I looked up at her. Did you write this? She nodded. Her voice was quiet. I didn't want to hurt Daddy. I just didn't want to be scared anymore. I reached across and took her hand. The truth can hurt sometimes, but silence hurts more. What you did today didn't hurt anyone. You protected yourself. You protected us. That's not wrong. She stared at the jar for a few seconds, then whispered, I think we should keep doing this. We will, I said, every night. That night, after she fell asleep, I walked into the living room and stood by the window. The streetlights flickered outside. Cars passed. Life went on. But everything inside our world had changed. Damon no longer controlled the narrative. He no longer controlled Mila's voice. And for the first time since the divorce, I felt like I could breathe deeply, knowing that I wasn't alone in this fight anymore. My daughter had stepped into a world far too heavy for her years. And she didn't just survive it, she changed it. The final custody hearing happened 4 weeks after the day Mila stood up in court. By then, everything had changed. The court-appointed counselor who interviewed Damon filed a detailed report. It outlined controlling behavior, emotional instability, and a concerning lack of empathy for Mila's well-being. He denied everything, of course, but the video spoke louder than any of his words ever could. Combined with Mila's statement, it was enough for the court to remove his unsupervised custody rights. When the judge read her final decision, I sat quietly holding my breath again. But this time, it wasn't from fear, it was from hope. Full physical and legal custody was granted to me. Damon would have strictly supervised visits twice a month at a neutral center with trained professionals. There would be no overnight stays, no more closed-door weekends, no more whispered threats. Mila's voice had shattered that illusion forever. We left the courthouse in silence that day. Mila held my hand as we walked down the long steps outside. My mother walked beside us, her purse swinging against her hip, eyes scanning the sidewalk for Damon, though we knew he wouldn't come near. He hadn't spoken to me since the first hearing. I was fine with that. Later that evening, we went to a small diner Mila loved, the one with the red booths and animal-shaped pancakes. She sat across from me and asked, "Is it over now?" I didn't lie. "It's safer now," I said. "We're not done growing through this, but we're not afraid anymore." She nodded and stirred her chocolate milk with her straw. I'm glad I told. So am I. There are days I still replay the courtroom in my head, the way Damon's face changed when Mila spoke, the way her voice, clear and calm, carried more weight than any legal argument made that day. My daughter reminded me that strength doesn't always come from shouting louder. Sometimes it comes from being brave enough to speak when you're not sure anyone will listen. In the weeks after the final ruling, I started therapy again. Not because I was falling apart, but because I finally had space to process what I had survived. I realized I had spent so long trying to stay afloat that I never learned how to feel safe again. That would take time. But now, I had the time. Mila began drawing more. Her sketches changed. They used to be full of houses with no windows and stormy skies. Now she draws trees with roots and kids holding hands. She drew a picture of the truth jar and taped it to her bedroom wall. Every night she reminds me to check it. One night I pulled out a note that said, "Do brave people still get scared?" I smiled and told her, "Yes. They just don't let fear be the end of the story." She wrote another one a few days later. "Can kids protect grown-ups too?" I looked at her and said, "You did." I tell this story because there are women out there right now sitting in silence, wondering if the truth will ever be enough, wondering if anyone will believe them over the person who knows how to perform the right version of themselves in public. I tell this story because sometimes the truth doesn't come from a lawyer or a courtroom argument. Sometimes it comes from a child who's seen more than she should have, and who decides that staying quiet is no longer an option. I used to think being a good mother meant shielding Mila from everything hard and painful. Now I know it means standing beside her through it, teaching her to tell the truth, letting her see me cry, then showing her what it looks like to get back up. We still have our hard days, but they don't define us. We are not the scared versions of ourselves that Damon tried to trap us in. We are loud when we need to be. We are quiet when we choose to be. And we are free. Mila saved us both that day. She didn't just bring the truth into that courtroom. She brought the light. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was losing her. I felt like I was meeting her for the first time. If you're still here, thank you for listening. This wasn't an easy story to tell, but I believe stories like this need to be told, because somewhere out there, another mother is sitting in silence, thinking no one will believe her, and maybe she just needed to hear this. If this story moved you, please like the video, share it with someone who needs it, and leave a comment. I read them, and they mean more than you know. And if you want to hear more real stories, raw, honest, and full of heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. There's more to come. Thanks again for being here. Stay brave, stay kind, and never forget that the truth matters.